Our stock markets are down as President Trump's long-threatened tariffs against Canada and Mexico come into force. The White House says the two countries are not doing enough to tackle migration and drug trafficking.
All right, as we've been reporting all morning, the U.S. has now imposed a 25% tariff on nearly all goods imported from Mexico and Canada.
This is Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, the most powerful woman in the world.
To the news of President Trump giving Mexico a one-month reprieve from his latest tariffs. But you see right there behind me, we are well into negative territory again today.
Mexico, a country that has long been considered the factory base of the North American geography, a country with a production capacity of hundreds of billions of dollars, and a country whose commercial integration with the United States was considered almost unbreakable. But recent events have shaken this conviction to its core. President Claudia Sheinbaum has made it clear that she will do more than raise her voice against Washington's unilateral tariffs. In recent statements, she has called the Trump administration's tariffs on everything, from cars to technological components, totally unacceptable, and said that if necessary, they could unleash a massive retaliatory package. Backstage rumors in the capital suggest that Mexico is planning a move that could cost the U.S. more than $100 billion. Additional tariffs or restrictions on strategic sectors, such as electric vehicles, steel, agricultural products, and energy could impose a heavy bill on the U.S. so that the Mexican people have turned this pushback into a national issue, and Sheinbaum's popularity is soaring, which is one of the most important factors that could frustrate Trump and even force him to backtrack. The picture that sparked the incident may seem simple. Trade between Mexico and the U.S. totaled over $800 billion in 2024. Automotive and spare parts trade accounts for a significant portion of this figure, around $150 billion. A growing share of this comes from electric vehicles. In the last 5 years, Mexico has made a major breakthrough in the supply and assembly of parts for hybrid and full electric cars. In fact, in 2020, for exports of electric vehicle components from Mexico to the United States increased by 40% compared to the previous year. Energy and agriculture are also noteworthy, with estimated shipments of agricultural products worth more than $35 billion. This creates an intertwined supply chain with Mexican vegetables, fruits and snacks flooding the U.S. market. In short, without an influx from Mexico, from U.S. grocery store shelves to the automobile assembly lines in Texas, production and consumption patterns would be severely challenged. This is precisely the card President Sheinbaum is putting on the table. The Trump administration has recently armed itself with tariffs against any country that it deems to be working against America or causing unfair competition. It would be a mistake to limit this to Mexico. In the same days, tariffs are being proposed against Canada, the European Union, and even Asian countries. But Mexico's position is critical because the integration between the two countries is very deep, and the two sides have built an intertwined production model under NAFTA, now USMCA, for more than 2 decades. When Mexico responded to Trump's "You will lose with my tariffs" by saying, "Then we will fight back tooth and nail," the question in Washington was, could Mexico really do $100 billion worth of damage to the United States? In the short term, such a loss is possible, and in the long term, Mexico would suffer. But Sheinbaum has the support of his people, and politically, he doesn't want to back down. Some experts say, where does the Mexican president's popularity come from? It is the first time that the Mexican people, who have long faced pressure from the United States on migration, security, and economic issues, have heard such a clear statement of enough is enough. Sheinbaum said for decades, "Our country has been providing cheap goods and labor to the U.S., but we are being cornered at every turn. This time we will not be the ones to back down." Sheinbaum said, more than 60% of the population is said to support this stance. Trump thought Mexico was in the bag, but Sheinbaum won't give in to him. One often hears in the country's media, Sheinbaum's popularity is on the rise in the polls, strengthening the hand of the Mexican leader, who is sending a message to Trump: we are not such a pushover. Consequently, there is growing concern on the U.S. side. Have we overdone it too much, and will we suffer in retaliation? The automobile industry in particular is considered one of Trump's lifeblood, because the administration, acting under the slogan of America First, aims to increase domestic production, while imposing additional taxes on foreign manufacturers and imported parts to deter them. In reality, however, many American companies are highly dependent on production lines. In Mexico, parts worth more than $100 billion a year flow north from Mexico, and without them giants like Ford, General Motors, and even Tesla can suffer production shortages. In retaliation, Mexico could impose tariffs on electric vehicle components, temporarily halt exports, or introduce tough legislation. This would raise production costs so much that American automakers would be forced to sell the final product. More expensively, sales would fall, and there would be a consumer backlash in the domestic market. Here lies some of the potential for more than $100 billion in losses. Only automotive, of course not. Mexico also has strong agricultural leverage. The tomatoes, peppers, avocados, lemons, mangoes, and countless other fruits and vegetables on American supermarket shelves come from Mexico according to 2024 data. The volume of this trade exceeds $35 billion. President Sheinbaum says that if necessary, they can impose temporary restrictions or additional taxes on the export of these products. This means that market prices in the U.S. will skyrocket, especially in states like California and Texas. The share of fresh produce coming from Mexico is very high. A restriction or tax increase could further fuel inflation there. It is debatable whether the Trump administration, fearing voter backlash, will take this risk, because the news that food prices in America are skyrocketing could also worry Trump's base. This puts Sheinbaum in an advantageous position as the message, "We are ready to do damage," is a threat that could force Washington to back down. Mexico's exports of metals, such as steel and aluminum, are also substantial. These metals, which are used in construction, automotive, and defense, determine the input costs of many factories in the U.S. If Mexico were to say we'll raise tariffs there too, or slow down exports, it could have unpleasant consequences for the American market, as project costs would rise. As for energy, Mexican oil and LNG exports are not as large as Canada's, although some states refine Mexican oil. If this area is involved in a crisis, the U.S. could face the risk of higher fuel prices. We're not 100% dependent, but a disruption from Mexico would complicate logistics and move prices, analysts say, all things considered. The U.S. economy could suddenly be vulnerable to a multi-pronged hit from Mexico. The potential damage of around $100 billion stems from this multi-layered trade network. How are these developments being received on the Trump front? Reportedly, there is serious consideration in the White House. Would Mexico really go this far? They're winning because of us, but if they show us teeth, they're going to pay the price, Trump said at a meeting on March 27th, but advisors report that with Sheinbaum's popularity soaring, such a confrontation could have devastating consequences. For the United States, it would be a diplomatic disaster for the two countries, which already have to work together on immigration, to engage in such a bitter trade spat. On the other hand, Trump says, "I cannot make concessions to the electoral base. We have to use the tariff weapon in the interest of the country." In other words, domestic political calculations make it difficult for the U.S. to back down in the international arena. Mexico, on the other hand, is moving in the opposite direction with the rhetoric of, "We will not bow down anymore." This is where the Canadian issue comes into play. Canada, the neighbor to the north, announced on April 2nd that it would announce retaliation. There is also a huge trade there from oil to automotive, with a volume of $900 billion. Mexico points to April 3rd. This will expose the Trump administration to a double squeeze, both in the north and the south. The question, are Canada and Mexico in coordination, is being asked loudly in economic circles, although officials from both countries officially say joint action is out of the question. Information leaking from the Ottawa administration suggests, "We did not expect Mexico, but this situation strengthens our position." Because if the U.S. faces a bilateral retaliation, it could be pulled back to the bargaining table. It is already rumored in the Washington lobbies that Trump is worried what if they both come at us. Therefore, if Sheinbaum's popularity and Karen's determination come together, and a united front forms against the U.S., Trump may be forced to reverse gear. For now, such a scenario is not officially confirmed, but it is clear that the interests of Mexico and Canada intersect. Back to electric vehicles. This sector is experiencing a new wave of growth all over the world. In the U.S., electric cars are being supported with government incentives. However, Trump's protectionist tariffs favor production in the U.S. while making parts from Mexico or Canada more expensive. This in effect inflates US manufacturers' own costs, raises sales prices, and angers even consumers. If there is an additional tax on parts from Mexico, brands like Tesla or Ford will face higher costs. As a result, car prices will go up, and electric vehicle conversion will cost more. For the middle-class consumer, Mexico wants to use this tension to its advantage, saying, "So the US is dependent on our components, so this is a trump card." The phrase more than $100 billion in damage to Trump is based on these calculations, meaning that the US could be hit with a huge financial bill, with cascading cost increases and export losses in areas such as automotive, agriculture, metals, and technology. Meanwhile, Mexico is also pushing its options in Asia and Europe. President Sheinbaum says we are not obliged to the US market, we are making new agreements. There's talk of big investment projects with countries like China and Japan. There are already trade agreements with the European Union, which if expanded could open new doors for Mexican manufacturers. All this weakens the US threat to Mexico that I am your only option. In Mexican public opinion, Trump has been complacent for a long time. But now he realizes that Sheinbaum is determined. If this gets serious, the US could be the real loser. This discourse is boosting Sheinbaum's popular support and seriously disturbing Trump. On the one hand, he needs to compromise with Mexico on issues such as migration policies and security cooperation. If they anger us, they could be in trouble on migration, trade, and security. The Mexican administration continues to press the US. As April 3rd approaches, it remains to be seen whether Washington will finally signal okay, let's sit down and talk. Trump is a bully, but he likes to make a deal at the last minute. Some White House advisors say, but Sheinbaum is also gaining strength in his electoral base, and if he backs down, he could lose credibility with the public. So a reversal is difficult for everyone. If Canadian leader Carney also announces a retaliatory package on April 2nd, Trump might wonder, shouldn't I pick a fight with two of my neighbors at the same time? Still, the US president's priority is to please his voter base. His speech is saying, I'm not a protectionist. I'm a fair trader. I'm ending unfair competition. Mobilize his base. It remains to be seen what the same base will say when they are affected by import costs. To summarize, Mexico's stance on the Trump tariffs goes far beyond an ordinary trade dispute. We see a country that wants to reduce its economic dependence, asserts a strong independent identity, and says, I am at the table in future sectors such as electric vehicles. As Sheinbaum's popularity grows rapidly along these lines, the Trump administration is grappling with the question, how much damage will we suffer if Mexico actually uses this leverage? $100 billion is a huge figure. Not easy to pronounce on paper, but given the depth of trade, the complexity of the supply chain, and Mexico's share in critical sectors, it is not an exaggeration. We don't know if it will succeed, but Sheinbaum's words, we're not going to back down, don't underestimate us, are creating excitement among the Mexican people and concern in the United States that maybe this time we can kick it into reverse. What do you think about this? Which sectors in the US would be hit if Mexico actually implements this tough retaliatory package? How much can Trump withstand? Or will he have to back down in the face of Sheinbaum's popularity? How would a trade war in the midst of the electric vehicle market affect global car prices? All these questions will be answered in the coming days. On April 2nd, Canada may announce its move, and on April 3rd, Mexico may announce its move. Thus, America could be caught in the middle of a bilateral trade storm, while the chances of a diplomatic compromise are still slim. The doors are not completely closed. Still, Sheinbaum's outburst makes Mexico an independent and powerful figure in the region, and puts Trump in an angry and contemplative position. If Washington doesn't say let's talk, Mexico is playing its toughest cards and preparing for retaliation that could cost $100 billion as damages. Let's see what April 3rd will bring. Maybe the White House will announce at the last minute, we are reviewing the tariffs. Or maybe Sheinbaum will say, there is no turning back now, and launch his package. Whatever the scenario, the North American trade order and political balance is likely to be shaken. This storm will not slow down in the short term, because Trump is not willing to back down, and the Mexican people are not ready to give up their struggle for dignity at the same time. Canada is on board in short. The spring of 2025 could be a new breaking point for US-centered global trade. We will follow every development closely. We look forward to your views in the comments. You can subscribe to our channel and like our video to stay up to date. Because Mexico's retaliation game is not just a dispute between Trump and Sheinbaum, but a power struggle that could have repercussions for the whole world. Surprises retreats, diplomatic moves all are on the table. Who knows, maybe Sheinbaum's popularity will take this to such a level that Trump will unexpectedly reverse gear. Or on the contrary, he will get tough and insist that I'm going to win. And a major trade war will knock on our door. Soon all the details will become clearer. For now, the voice coming from Mexico says, we will no longer be a servant to anyone. The US, on the other hand, says don't underestimate us and defends its tariffs. Whatever the outcome, there is talk of a potential damage of more than $100 billion. We will learn the winners and losers together. Stay tuned.